All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and viewers joining us online, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the official launch of the UNFPA State of the World Population Report 2020. And this year it's entitled Against My Will, Defying the Practices that Harm Women and Girls and Undermine Equality. I'm Maria Ramos. I'm a TV news anchor here at TRT World, and it is a pleasure to welcome you here to Istanbul, live from our Studio 2 at TRT World. Now, this is a report that is being launched globally, and this is our regional launch for Eastern Europe and Central Asia region. Now, we have an incredible lineup of leading experts, officials, activists, and creative minds to discuss the report and also look at important solutions. Now, a quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you're following the conversation online, a reminder that we have the following hashtags: She Counts, Against Her Will, and also Swap 2020. And a reminder to our panelists to kindly please stick to time. Brevity is very beautiful. Timekeeping is touching. And if you have any questions or comments, please use the Facebook feed, and the UNFPA team will make sure no question will remain unanswered. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our very first guest. She is a supermodel, a philanthropist, also a UNFPA partner, and a tireless advocate for shattering taboos around women and girls' health and bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Natalia Vodianova. Natalia, the floor is yours. If you could unmute.
Oh, sorry, someone muted me. Thank you so much, Maria. I congratulate UNFPA on this year's State of the World Population Report that focuses on harmful practices around girls and women. This report reminds us that millions of girls are still subject to female genital mutilation, and millions of girls are forced into marriages even though they're still children. Millions of girls aren't even born because their parents choose to have sons, not daughters. All these practices have one underlying cause in common: undervaluing of girls. In many societies around the world, including Europe, this is still a problem. Girls are still seen as burden, not as important as boys. I'm very familiar with this mindset with my own work with UNFPA, combating stigmas and taboos around female bodies and female health. Period-related stigmas send messages that to be a woman, it's almost an illness. And I'm very happy that today's report, this year's report, is covering this important topic. And there is still a lot we can do to change the way the world sees girls and women. This year's World Population Report is not only a reminder of how much work still needs to be done, it also gives us concrete suggestions of how we can tackle those issues and how we can eradicate those harmful practices. I am myself fully committed to do whatever I can to promote the world where girls face no stigma and discrimination just because they are girls. So congratulations, UNFPA. I wish you a very successful launch of this important report.
Natalia, thank you so much for your powerful message and encouraging words. It's really stuck with me what you just said. It is almost like an illness to be a woman. Thank you so much for your message, Natalia. All right, thank you. We move on. Time now to bring in Alana Armitage, Alana is the director of the UNFPA's regional office for Eastern Europe and also Central Asia. The UNFPA is leading efforts in this region to combat harmful practices. Alana, tell us about the report that we're launching today. What are the key findings globally and also for this region?
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for hosting the launch of our report. And thank you, Natalia, for the inspirational message and really the courage that you have shown throughout your life to defy the norms that harm women and girls. Good morning, good afternoon from Istanbul to our panelists and audience. And thank you for joining us for the regional launch of UNFPA's 2020 State of the World Population Report. So Maria, you asked the question. Our report this year focuses on the hundreds of thousands of girls who are subjected to practices that harm them physically or psychologically with the full knowledge and consent of their families, friends, and communities. Imagine a girl, she's 12 years old, she loves school, her teachers say she has a gift for math. Then one morning when she wakes up, her parents tell her to put on her best clothes, and in a couple of hours, she's going to be married off to a neighbor who's at least 3 times her age. She'll never be able to go back to school. Imagine another girl, she's 16. She wakes up one day to find out that she's about to go through a rite of passage. A few hours later, her genitals are cut by the woman who does it to all the girls in the village. And imagine yet another girl, she's 4 years old. She overhears her parents say how cursed they are not to have a son. They complain that their daughter is nothing but a burden. UNFPA's State of the World Population Report shows that in fact, there's no need to imagine these scenes because they're all real and they play out tens of thousands of times a day, every day, all over the world. Our report cites at least 19 specific practices against girls and women that have been almost universally denounced as abuse and violations of human rights, ranging from breast ironing to virginity testing. But 3 in particular remain stubbornly widespread: female genital mutilation, child marriage, and gender-biased sex selection. These harmful practices against women and girls cause profound and lasting trauma. A one-time moment that generates a cascade of harm which robs them of their right to reach their full potential in life. This year, around the world, more than 4 million girls will be subjected to genital mutilation. Today alone, 33,000 girls will be forced to marry. And right now, more than 140 million females are considered missing from the world's population due to a preference for sons over daughters in some countries, which has fueled what we call gender-biased sex selection. This leads to huge imbalances in the composition of a country's population for generations. And when men far outnumber women, social problems can emerge. Men may need to delay or forego marriage because they will be unable to find a spouse. And this so-called marriage squeeze can exacerbate forms of gender-based violence, including rape, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and child marriage. These are global figures, but some of these practices are also common in parts of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Up to 15% of women were married before they turned 18 in some countries in Southeast Europe, the Caucasus, and Central Asia. And as we'll hear in a moment from Professor Guilmoto, up to 114 boys are born for every 100 girls in parts of the Caucasus and Southeast Europe. All these forms of harmful practices have a common root cause: the widespread belief that girls are less valuable than boys, that it's preferable to have a boy, that it's not worth investing in girls because they will leave the family anyway and be someone else's property, or that there are certain things girls shouldn't do because it threatens the honor of the family. Basically, the decisions should be made for girls, but not by girls. These norms can manifest themselves in pressure within families and communities, pressure to have a son rather than a daughter, pressure on parents to marry their daughters when they're still children, and pressure on girls to endure abuse and violence. These pressures come from men, fathers, brothers, grandfathers, but not only. Women, mothers-in-law often equally buy into societal expectations and exert pressure. And then there are the many more subtle pressures we're bombarded with on television, in magazines, and on social media, and in myriads of social interactions, contributing to a still powerful social norm that girls are different from boys, weaker, less valuable, less important. In some countries in our region, girls are given the name enough, a cruel expression of parents' desire to finally have a son. So when so many girls and women are unwanted, cut, erased, given, traded, and sold, our common future is undermined, and we should all be outraged. And that is why we're here today, to raise awareness about the gender inequality and negative attitudes that drive harmful practices, but also to showcase how governments, communities, advocates, and academics are changing the norms that perpetuate these practices. I'm so grateful today that we have an amazing panel of creative minds who are working, as the title of our report suggests, to defy the practices that harm women and girls and achieve a world where every woman and girl is free to chart her own future. Back to you, Maria. Thank you very much.
Alana, thank you so much. You know, you speak so powerfully. Those examples that you gave at the beginning, they are indeed really powerful. And those decisions, as you say, made for girls, not by girls. Thank you, Alana. We move on, and just a quick reminder to our audience who are joining us online. If you have just joined us, we are launching the UNFPA State of the World Population Report 2020. And coming up next, we are going to be hearing about the issue of son preference and then child marriage. Our hashtags, a quick reminder, are She Counts, Against Her Will, and Swap 2020. And welcome to all of you watching by Facebook. Okay, we continue. We go now to Professor Guilmotto, Christophe Guilmotto, who is a senior fellow in democracy at the French Research Institute for Development, and he teaches at the Université Paris Descartes. Professor Guilmotto is the leading expert on gender bias, sex selection, and also son preference in this region and also beyond. And he is also one of the authors of the report that we are launching here today. Welcome to you, Christophe. Christophe, my question to you is that as a journalist, I knew that son preference exists in India. We talk about this a lot, but I was surprised that it also exists in Europe. Where exactly and why? What are the motives?
Hi, Maria. I'm very happy to join you and be able to talk about the report. So in fact, I was just like you, Maria, about 10 years ago. And at that time, I used to travel regularly to China, to India, to Vietnam, to all these places where the sex ratio at birth, the ratio of male birth to female birth, was way higher than the biological ratio, which is usually 105 male births per 100 female births. And at that time, we knew already why there were sex imbalances at birth. It was due to GBSS, that is gender bias sex selection, or prenatal sex selection, and then sex selective abortions. But then one day I decided to look closer at the situation in Europe and to look at places which I had visited earlier as a tourist, and I decided to assemble data on these countries. And that's how I discovered that there were a few countries where in Europe, very close to where I am in France, where you would have also far too many male births. And luckily in this part of Europe, of Eastern Europe, we have good statistics. So we were able to put them together. So maybe I could share with you one first slide that will show you the imbalances and here you can see that that's about 10 years ago, that they were in 6 countries here, 110 or 115 or sometimes even higher male births. And we were surprised. So we had a lot of discussion and debate with colleagues of mine, statisticians and gender activists. They didn't know that the imbalances were so pronounced. But to cut the story short, I should say that things have really improved. And here I'm also reporting good news. So if you look, for example, at the next pictures that I've prepared, you see the situation 10 years later in the same countries. So first, you see there are 2 clusters, one in South Caucasus and the other one is in Eastern Europe around Albania. And in these 2 clusters, we see a reduction in sex imbalances, and it's a significant one, you know. And look, for instance, at the case of Georgia, where it has declined, you know, to now 207, which is very close to the biological level of 105. And similarly, you see decline everywhere. In fact, this sex ratio at birth tells us the story of what has happened in many countries of Eastern Europe. For instance, let me focus on the South Caucasus, that is Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, and look at the trends which I've put in the next slide, and you will be able to see the trends over the last 30 years. So see at what happened in 1991, immediately after the collapse of the Soviet Union. That there was the collapse also of a social and political and economic system. And their people decided to rely on their families. And how to do that? Well, families were built along male lines, so they wanted to have sons. And that's why you have a sudden jump simultaneously in these 3 countries of the South Caucasus, immediately after independence in the early 1990s. And then these countries reached some kind of a peak after about 10 years, sometimes very high, as you can see, for instance, for Armenia and Azerbaijan, to levels close to 120, what we saw at the same time in China. And ever since, over the last 20 years, there is a gradual improvement. That is slow but visible in Azerbaijan, slightly more rapid in Armenia, and more pronounced in Georgia, where in fact sex imbalances today are minimal. So here I'm happy to report that, and you will find more details in the UNFPA report on harmful practices, that we see a global decline, not only in this part of the world, but elsewhere. And so it is very important to understand that things have been bad, but they can improve. It's not like people will keep on having artificially more sons than they should through selective abortions. In fact, our mindsets are changing, attitudes are not what they used to be 20 years ago. So it's really the end of a painful, I would say, social, but also gender transition in this part of the world.
Okay, Christophe, thank you very much. I've learned a lot, and it's very encouraging to hear, as you say, that there is a global decline and things are improving. That graph you showed after 1990, that was an incredible peak there. Great to hear that things are improving. Thank you so much for your remarks, Christophe. Thank you. All right, let's continue now and bring in Nesime Salioska. Now, Nesime is a prominent Roma rights advocate from North Macedonia, and she has an incredible introduction. She is the winner of the EU Award for Roma Integration in 2019. She was also recognized by the UNFPA as a real superhero, one of 9 real-life superheroes, and a chain breaker, and she is also a leading advocate against child marriage. Nesime, I want to ask you, I want to talk now about child marriage. We've heard that it still is a big issue. Now, you've worked very closely with the Roma community where early marriage is common. From your experience, why is it that it is common? Why do parents marry off their daughters so early? Nesime, if you can hear me?
Good morning from North Macedonia. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nesime, hello.
Dear all, I feel so privileged to be part of this panel, and I would like to thank UNFPA for inviting me. I feel lucky also to be the speaker after the respected professor and his presentation on son preference, which basically shaped my speech. And that is why, Maria, on my way to answer to your question, I will try to make a smooth bridge through sharing a personal story, going hand in hand to Alana's images that she presented also. In that way, I would like to show image 1, please. On this picture, I'm the second girl when I was 10 years old, together with my 2 sisters, born in a family which faced a lot of disappointments since had no son to make them proud. Actually, I realized this when my 4th sister was born, a couple of months after the picture was taken, and when my father, instead of waiting at the hospital for the delivery of the newborn, he was sitting at home and waiting for a phone call. When the phone rang and he was told that it is a girl, he just hung down the phone and wept. In meanwhile, family and community members came to visit us, and I was hearing many of them saying, when a girl is born, even the roof of the house weeps, meaning no happiness can be found in a house where a girl is born. It means parents will raise a child which will be useful for another house and not for the one in which is born. I struggled to understand the attitude at that time and said to myself that this situation is wrong. I was frustrated. While I was trying to find a way how to change it, I looked closely at my schoolmates. I realized that there are families where girls are expected to become doctors, lawyers, presidents, while I was told at the same time that I will never become director. And imagine, actually this became my window of opportunities. Throughout the years, by investing in my education, of course, against my father's will, not only that I have become director of a local CCO, but I have also become a positive example in the community. I represented an empowered woman and fighter for gender equality, and of course, a national heroine last year entitled by the European Commission. Now we can see image 2, please. On this picture, you can see my small nieces who now dream to become directors, and their favorite game is to sit on my desk and pretend that they work with me. My nieces today have a choice to define their future, while their father say it is possible to fulfill their potential based on the belief that genes affect my genes. However, this sweet story is faced by bitterness. The last cute girl at this picture is not my niece. but my grandniece, or the daughter of my firstborn niece who escaped from home in 2015 to marry her boyfriend when she was 16, since she was not allowed to date him freely. Her mother believed that dating a boy might bring shame to the family. At the same time, she dropped out from school, and I did not find any state actor to be interested in this case. They were actually neglecting this kind of cases since 16 legally was an age when a person could make independent decisions, and in particular when a Roma family was involved and their perception of usual community behavior where they should not interfere. It was an act, actually, which attracted my full attention. For me, it was like a backlash from the time when I was 10 years old and I was listening to the words of the community about the expectations from a girl that her destiny is to be a housewife and a mother. I realized that I missed some part of the puzzle and I had to fix it. My efforts resulted with the publication, which you can see on this picture, which was named The Gray Area Between Tradition and Children's Rights, going beyond my family and personal experience, trying to understand what was the problem behind that attitude. The research revealed three main findings. The first one was saying that the Roma community is still patriarchal, where women and girls perform traditional roles. These isolated and left behind communities often have a significant fear of the society, so some of these patriarchal values are applied as a protective mechanism for girls. Gender discrimination is more or less compatible to ethnic discrimination, which the community faces with decades by state actors and on a daily basis. Child marriages, although they fall into the category of gender-based violence, are not clearly recognized as such by state institutions, which fail to act in a manner to prevent or protect the victims, with an attitude that no action can change our Roma customs. Namely, what for many women groups is the past, for Roma women and girls is the present, and please let me point out what I mean by this. Roma women and girls live in societies where what violation of rights is for others, including exercise of sexual and reproductive rights. For them, it is a tradition. Roma women and girls face a perception of having no value without a husband, while their virginity is a family honor. Women in my community are homeless all their life. Their family house doesn't belong to them, since property is inherited normally by male children, and she's expected to join another house where she will be a stranger. So that's why I'm saying that she's homeless all her life and she will never be an owner of a house. At the same time, I must mention that it is a lifetime inequality and a form of disempowerment, not only of girls, but also of boys. Let's not forget that sometimes also boys are minor in this kind of marital unions. And that's why there is a question about the readiness of these persons to raise and educate future generations, as well as about their personal psychological development. Many times, low socio-economic status of the parents is the reason why they want their daughters to marry abroad. When I say abroad, I mean on EU high developed countries, as a way to provide them a better future for their girls, for their daughters, followed by the belief that faith compatibility is highly important as well. Faced by continuous lack of information and choices, we can notice that children think that love is the leading force in creating their future, while their parents do not know how to deal with this kind of behavior due to the fear related to sexual life, which is a taboo topic still in the Roma communities. There is not sufficient communication between parents and their children on the issue, except that virginity testing is the most important event of each girl's life, and parents are very proud at that moment. Having all these factors in the surrounding, the customary law becomes above the national law, and the exception becomes a rule, poverty, economic dependence, domestic violence, early and multiple pregnancies, health problems, mental disorders, low educational status, early aging, regrets, as well as unemployment become a normal life for many women and girls. Thank you.
Wow. Nasima, thank you very much indeed for sharing that personal story. It is so powerful. I personally have learned so much listening to that. Wow, that saying, when a girl is born, even the roof of the house weeps. That really made my hair stand on end. And thank you for sharing also the story about your nieces. And you really are a superhero. No wonder you've been chosen as a superhero. Thank you so much. Okay, let's continue now. And it's time to introduce Lela Akiashvili. She is the advisor to the Prime Minister of Georgia on human rights and also gender equality issues. She has years of background working on human rights and gender equality for the United Nations and civil society in Georgia and also internationally. Lela, if you can hear me, this is my first question to you. We know that Georgia has one of the highest rates of child marriage and has also been grappling with the effects of some preference. As an advisor to the Prime Minister of Georgia, what do you advise him and the government that they should do with regards to address these practices?
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for posing the question, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very important event. And thanks to the host, our host UNFPA online. Let me tell you that one child bride is married away every 2 minutes. And this is not a horror movie start. This is a global reality in the world that families face who have challenging enough lives for their social and economic hardships. And that is why, to answer your question, I tell Prime Minister that we need to fight each and every girl. And we do fight each and every girl in the country to make sure that we change the future for them and we provide opportunities to them that they deserve. We can do this through a number of directions. We can do this through policy and through international policy, such as Sustainable Development Goals and nationalizing Target 5.3, that is Sustainable Development Goal Target 5.3, aiming at elimination of all harmful practices. That is through creating national human rights protection mechanisms. And here, let me tell you that Prime Minister of Georgia has a Human Rights Council. It's a very high level, that's a very high level decision-making body that works on issues such as elimination of child marriages and elimination of harmful practices. So we can adopt international legislation, we can create gender protection mechanisms. I'm chairing Gender Equality Commission of the country that also works on multiple issues on how to improve gender equality in the country, not through one direction, but through many directions. But you know where the challenge is, that challenge for the government, and I think other countries share as well, is that it is impossible to combat harmful practices only through legal changes, only through policy changes, only through forbidding some actions. Because when we speak about harmful practices, including early child marriages, this is very close to people. This is what people experience. This is what they have in their families. This is close to their traditions. That is why we need to act apart from legislation, apart from policy changes. We need to act in 3 directions. Action point number 1, create opportunities for young people. Qualitative data in Georgia shows that sometimes girls choose to marry away because this is the only way they think they can continue their life. So we need to provide them opportunities, education opportunities, economic opportunities, development opportunities, so that they see other ways. And we do that through a number of activities on the ground level. Going and working with the ground level, in our opinion, is immensely important, because no matter what we decide at the high level policy level, as long as we need to go to people and speak to people. Action number 2, include all in the process and strengthen cooperation. Here on the ground, we have the strongest UNFPA team, and I'm not saying it because they are listening live right now, but really we do have daily cooperation with them, and that helps us to further bring in more actors, such as private sector. We started very good cooperation with Body Shop. This is a global network that will help give stipends and give financial support to girls who are at the risk of child marriage, so that they can feel themselves economically independent and make the step and say no, instead of I do, say I do not, and start living their independent life. And the action number 3 that we think is immensely important is empower, 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 and empower. Much like Nesime, unfortunately, I can also tell you many examples from Georgian language, how when sometimes girl is born, you could hear phrases such as, that is okay, maybe boy is next. Don't worry, it's still gonna be fine. As if some people try to try to help parents to overcome this sad fact that the girl was born in their family. Unfortunately, we do have many daily traditions and daily, it's not even tradition, but habits that sometimes we do not even notice, how we encourage boys to become heroes, to play with strong toys, to be the man of the family, never cry, regardless of circumstances. And we think that girls are the ones who we should take care until their marriage years, and then family gives the girl away. This is not how the reality works, and this is not the current, in the current world, this is not how the fairy tales that many girls dream about. No, we need to make sure that girls dream about economic empowerment, girls dream about education. We need to make sure that girls do want to become rocket scientists, because that's interesting for them, and they can play with rockets at their young age. We need to break stereotypes that is in our culture, and make sure that culture is never an excuse. Regardless of the country, regardless of community, regardless of circumstances, and this is very tricky as well, because when you are from the government's role, and as you've mentioned, I've been to many other roles, it's very hard to say, I'm imposing the cultural change. You cannot impose the cultural change as a government. You need to bring actors together so that through multiple actions, you create environment for young people so that they themselves make decision to continue education. They themselves make decision not to drop out from schools and continue their lives. At the end, I would like to say that we do have good news. And good news is that years of action and years of seeking for solutions and years of policy change do bring results. And as was presented in the presentation, we do see drastic decline of the sex ratio at birth in Georgia. We do see improvements in many other directions as well. And that we are currently working on the action plan to bring together different ministries and combat child marriages. So at the end of the day, yes, we can win this fight. Yes, we can fight for each girl. And yes, we can make sure that their happily after is education and not the old tradition fairy tales. Thank you.
Leila Akiashvili, fantastic. What an inspirational speech. That statistic is so memorable and so powerful. One child bride is married away every 2 minutes. I didn't know that. And that is very, very, very important for our audience and everyone to know. I love what you said, to get really close to the people. It's not coming, from the top down, go to that ground level. And yes, girls, to become and dream of being rocket scientists and empower, empower, empower. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, we are, I think, nearly halfway through almost. Yes, and a reminder to our audience, if you're watching on Facebook and you've just joined us, this is the launch of the UNFPA State of the World Population Report 2020. We have an incredible lineup of guests with us, and we've just heard some of the key points of this year's report about the situation in the region with regards to harmful practices. And now, we move on and we look at solutions, practical solutions, and we have two more guests that we haven't heard from yet, and that includes the singer Kalia, so do stay tuned for that. And our hashtags are SheCounts, Against Her Will, and Swap 2020. All right, we're going to go back to the top and we're going to bring in again Alana Armitage, the regional director for the UNFPA Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And we're going to speak about solutions. Alana, what does the report offer as solutions for ending these practices that we've discussed?
Well, thank you again, Maria. The report clearly states that there is no quick fix to stop harmful practices. And I think we heard that from all of our panelists just now, because these practices are shaped by a myriad of factors. Because of that, eradicating them requires a comprehensive approach that includes prevention, protection, and care. But what we do know is that to get to zero harmful practices, we have to move much faster. And our report highlights a series of actions that will help change minds and change lives. First and foremost, and I think Nessie said this, we need to get serious about women's rights and gender equality. The good news is that there is international consensus that it's time to eradicate harmful practices, and we are seeing progress. More and more individuals and communities are defying the deeply rooted norms and stereotypes that keep harmful practices going. And I mean, just look at this amazing panel today. Governments are collecting better data on harmful practices, strengthening the evidence base, and signing international agreements to protect girls' rights. Private sector, and we're going to hear soon, is engaging in incredibly powerful prevention campaigns. Parliamentarians are passing laws banning harmful practices. But as Leila just said, laws are just a starting point. And in some cases, laws can have the unintended effect of driving these practices underground. We know, for example, that many child marriages in this region are not officially registered, but are done informally. Decades of experience and research shows that we must tackle the problem of harmful practices by tackling the causes. Bottom up, and again, I'm repeating Leila, bottom up grassroots approaches are better at bringing change, and for change to be lasting, it must come from within. Communities must stand for equal rights for girls so that they can stay in school, learn about their choices, and shape their own futures. Our role at UNFPA is to support communities by facilitating conversations that help parents understand the physical and psychological toll of these practices and the benefits that come to everyone when these practices are abandoned. In addition, we need to mobilize men as allies for change. And we know this works because we're seeing successes all over the region where men are stepping up and speaking out to raise the value of girls and demand the equal treatment of boys and girls. In fact, this year's State of the World Population Report tells the story of Janoglan Ilyasov from Azerbaijan, a proud father of a one-year-old daughter who's now speaking up for women and girls and leading workshops to encourage men to examine their attitudes towards gender equality. He says that his pride is talking and listening to his daughter and telling her that she matters. We also need to tap into the power and support the young girls and young women who have survived harmful practices and are acting as champions for their abandonment. Our goal at UNFPA is to see zero harmful practices by the end of this decade. This is also the goal of the international community and is a target of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So Maria, in answer to your question on how we can achieve this goal, our report highlights 3 solutions. First, respect. We must foster respect for women and girls by changing entrenched attitudes and practices that dehumanize and commoditize them. This means disrupting the root causes of inequality and respecting girls' autonomy. Second, protect. We must protect women and girls by enacting and enforcing laws against practices like child marriage, but also, and more importantly, by changing attitudes and norms. And finally, fulfill. Governments must fulfill their obligations under human rights treaties that require the elimination of female genital mutilation and child marriage. So these three words, respect, protect, and fulfill, can bring real change and real results for women and girls. And I think we would all agree here that we cannot stop until the rights, choices, and bodies of all girls are fully their own. Back to you, Maria. Thank you.
Alana, thank you very much indeed. And your work really is amazing. I really like what you said about laws actually drive the practices underground. And it's so encouraging to hear about that example in Azerbaijan of the father as an example of mobilizing men as allies for change. I look forward to reading about that more in detail. All right, let's go back now to Christophe Guilmoto. Christophe, a question for you on solutions. On the subject of son preference, what strategies have actually worked in bringing sex ration imbalances back to normal levels?
Thanks, Maria. Remember, as we've seen, there has been a gradual improvement in Eastern Europe from Albania to Azerbaijan over the last 20 years, with sex imbalances at birth on the decline. And this is not the first time it's happening. We've seen it also, for instance, in South Korea after the 1990s. And we've seen it happening almost everywhere in the world. But now you're right, it's time to understand what has happened and why. So let's remember that sex imbalances at birth are there because of son preference, due to traditional family systems, access to modern technology, and decline in fertility. And these factors explain why it emerged, why sex-selective abortions emerged, but they also explain why they will ultimately disappear. And we also see two larger factors. One is social and economic change, and the other one are policies introduced by the government. And there is no doubt that in Eastern Europe, parents during the 1990s found themselves in a terrible situation where they started to see extra girls as burdens. And it is because fertility was very low. It plunged in the 1990s. And in this panic, parents decided to privilege the birth of sons. But things have changed now. Fertility rates are no more declining. In fact, they have rebounded in many parts of Eastern Europe, like, for example, South Caucasus. And why is it so? It's because the economic and political and social landscape has entirely changed. And son preference has changed as well. People still desire to have sons in the way that was described, for instance, by Nesimi, but they won't do it through sex selection. They will do it just by having one more child. And also at the same time, they see their daughters and women at large prospering in society through education and empowerment. And yet, at the same time, governments started to mobilize. And it is the first crucial step was to define the issue of sex imbalances at birth and to recognize its presence in these countries. And let's not hide it, it took quite some time. So it's only around 2010 that countries were able to see what was happening, which is in fact hidden because nobody wants to talk about it when it comes to gender biased sex selection. But now the issue has been acknowledged and it's properly monitored in most of these countries. You know, you could see, for example, in Albania that you have the statisticians will give you the number of girls missing every year at birth. So monitoring is really essential. And finally, there were policies and intervention introduced. Some focus directly on women's opportunities and rights, like for example, focusing on access to employment, but also access to inheritance, which is of which women are very often deprived in Eastern Europe. And some other policies were way broader, let me put it this way, because they targeted political or social institutions, like for example, offering social protection to families or to the elderly. So these policies contributed to the expansion of opportunities or the strengthening of opportunities for young women. So we've been talking about education and empowerment, and they had some impact on cultural attitudes, because cultural change is very slow, you know, and because as Leila was saying, we do stuff that we don't even know that we reproduce from traditional customs, and so it takes time, but this is happening, you know, again in the Balkans, as well as in Southern Caucasus, and it's part of social and economic transformations, which are rapid in Eastern Europe, but at the same time, in the slow but irreversible change in gender attitudes. So I think there is no stopping it, and that's why I'm very positive that sex imbalances at birth will have disappeared by the end of the decade. Thank you, Mara.
Christophe, thank you very much. It's great to hear and end on that positivity, and you bring good examples and very good news. That's really encouraging for all the work everyone on this panel is doing and all the girls affected in all over the world and in the region. Thank you. Okay, we're going to bring in a voice that we haven't heard yet, and that is Orkan Kerimov, the founder and, wait for this, I absolutely love this title, Chief Happiness Officer. I repeat, Chief Happiness Officer, I want that title, at Endorphin, which is a leading advertising agency in Azerbaijan, Baku. Orkan, thank you so much for joining us. Now, your agency has worked on a creative campaign to change the norms on son preference, and it has something to do with a name. Tell us how it started and what you did exactly.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you to invite me to such a meaningful session, firstly. And let me introduce shortly that in 2019, we have been a part of the countrywide project initiated by the UNFPA country office in Azerbaijan aimed at combating the phenomenon of the gender-based sex selection, the project called Missing Girls. And in our country, it's enough. Can you imagine? It's enough. The girl name is enough. And this happened because of the majority who want a boy instead of the girl child, and regrettably, as a result of the countries having one of the most skewed sex ratios favoring the male children following the widespread practice of the sex-selective abortion. And it's estimated that if such a situation continues, the indicator will become even more skewed. And it's the UNFPA official prediction for 2050 claims that the newborn boys will be approximately 15,000 more than a girl each year. This is a big number considering it's a problem that together with the UNFPA Azerbaijan, we designed and implemented the Missing Girl campaign. The background of the campaign in Azerbaijan, population gives more importance to boys because they think they got a major role in society, such as a leadership, the one who brings home money. and continues the family surname and ensures old age supports. In our Missing Girl campaign, we aim to reaching to many people as possible across the cities and villages of the country. And we need to plan to create awareness about the situation. Also, one of the major banks of the Azerbaijan, private sector, Capital Bank, joined and support the campaign and contributing to the implementation with the strong outdoor advertisement coverage via their branches. That's very important. And we use digital communication platforms, out-of-home advertisement, and influencers. Also, we create also a petition to end these names such as "It's Enough" and these names meaning that enough. The creative idea, the campaign, is actually to create awareness of the beautiful meanings of the Azerbaijani female names. While focusing on this, we try to remove discriminating the names like Azerbaijani yeter, kifayettir, bestits, all of the meaning is enough. And these names are the effect of a society that prefers boy children to girl children. That is the reason Azerbaijan is the second country in the world after China for the sex ratio at birth. And exhibition part is very important. The campaign started with regional interviews. After my speech, I will show a case video about it. And we ask individuals to see the actual facts of the problem. We caught effective reactions, as you can, after my speech, you can see our case video, that our key visuals and our second part where we use the different dimensions of the being with a girl and without her. Also, we have a strong headlines which focus on the female names. We made a photo shooting with the girls and with the parents. Also, we strongly use social media with full elements. Finally, we also applied through the change.org platform to remove these such names. And actually, I don't want to talk about the result. Let's see our video. The campaign, the result, and the case video. At the end of my speech, I would like to say that the girls complete our world. Let's value them as much as boys. Let's watch your video. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Orkan. And yes, we're going to play that video now. I hope. Are we playing the video? Is it coming? Yes.
Imagine a girl whose name is Enough. The natural sex ratio at birth is 106 males to 100 females, while in Azerbaijan, this ratio is 114 males to 100 females.
Statistik rəqəmlər Azərbaycanda qızların say azlığından xəbər verir.
Selektiv abortların sayı artır.
Bu vəziyyət gələcəkdə əhalinin ümumi strukturu və dinamikası baxımından çox xoşagəlməz nəticələrə gətirib çıxara bilər.
Unfortunately, in Azerbaijan, this issue has never been referred to as a problem. In our society, men have always been regarded as more significant than women. Due to this problem, we identified the regions where the number of sex-selective abortions is high regarding UNFPA data. Within 2 days, with over 1,000 kilometers passed, we found out the opinions of citizens.
Oğlan şöhrətdir. Oğlan varisdir, hamı istəyir onu.
200 dənə oğlan nəvəm var.
The result astonished us.
Ailəmdə 9 qız olub, mən tək oğlanım. Axırıncı bacımın adı Bastit.
Those families discontented with newborn girl children give specific names to their infants, meaning because they need no girl children. We, on the contrary, showed these people that there are far more appropriate names to be given to their daughters. We changed the agenda of the country, and people started discussing the campaign. We used the outdoor tools to deliver the campaign to a broader audience. With the help of Capital Bank, the project supporter, we managed to have our posters hanging out at 112 branches of Capital Bank in the most distant parts of Azerbaijan, where an advertisement is not widespread. The country's significant news site started sharing articles about the campaign. We started the next and most popular wave of the project, where we inspire the audience to show love for their daughters. This wave that we started with influencers soon spread all over the country. The social media was overflown by photos with daughters. And finally, we managed to change the outlook of the society regarding attitude toward girls, both on social media and streets. They realized the importance of girl children. Up to now, this topic has never been discussed on such level, both because of political and public pressure. Nevertheless, we did it. We hope that soon there will be no names like enough.
Orhan, congratulations. That is a fantastic video, a fantastic campaign. And yes, I hope there will come a time where there is no name for girls called Enough. I actually work very closely with two lovely ladies from Azerbaijan, very dear colleagues. I've also been to Baku, a fantastic country. Thank you. And it's great to see also the funding behind that from a major bank. Good luck with your work and congratulations. Thank you. Okay, let's continue. We're going to go back to Nesime. Nesime, you successfully advocated for legal changes in North Macedonia to raise the age of marriage. Is this, do you think, the key to eradicating child marriage, to raise the age? That question to you.
Yes, thank you for the question. Several times it was mentioned by you, but from all other panelists, that statistics and numbers are very important to understand better the problem. However, we have to acknowledge that the general problem in assessing the real prevalence of child marriages is that many of them are not registered. They are not official. So that's why we cannot have the real data. They are not part of the standard system for data collection. And that's why it is very hard for the government to create any policy related to the issue. On the other hand, I must mention that usually the issue is related to some ethnic groups, like in this case with the Roma. So this kind of ethnic stigmatization is creating additional lack of action and commitment by relevant institutions who usually believe that they should not interfere into breaking this kind of traditional behaviors. Not very often, on the other hand, it can be seen that the issue is related to children who are not mature enough to make decisions independently, or they do not have the maturity for full consent. So the state is the one who, through legal regulations and acts of the institutions, should protect them within the frames of established norms for the rights of the children and their best interest, because let's not forget, all children are children. That is why we have been working for several years together with the parliamentarians, civil society organizations, ombudsman, and UN agencies, including UNFPA, to advocate for institutional changes and raise their awareness about the problem. Luckily, in December 2018, these efforts resulted with the passing of a new amendment to the criminal law, making the extramarital union under age of 18 a crime. When I say extramarital union, I must say that these are the marriages, the informal marriages, the ones who are not regulated by the state. On the other hand, the new law was followed by changes and amendments to the law on primary education, because education is mostly affected by this kind of behavior. And in August 2019, the state clearly regulated the momentum where whenever a girl drops out from school, the teacher should write down the real reason why that girl is dropping out from school. In that way, the teacher should inform all other relevant institutions like the Center for Social Affairs, the State Education Inspectorate, and also municipality responsible persons, so they can act accordingly to protect and bring back the girl to the school. This mainly paved the way for a broader public debate on child marriages in the country, and also opened space for our next step, which we hope that we are going to follow in the following year, and that should be the changes of the law on secondary education with the same content. The final step will include changes of the family law, where also we will try to make a legal recognition of this kind of extramarital unions in order, again, to register them and ensure that this kind of relationships are forbidden. I have to mention also that in November 2019 at the Nairobi Summit on ICPD 25, the government of North Macedonia committed itself to eliminate child marriages by 2030, thanks to the public debates that we organized in the previous years, and thanks to the result that we successfully promoted, and that is the fact that child marriages are not present only in the Roma communities, but also can be found in other communities and among the general population. That this is a problem of the rights of the children and not a problem of an ethnic community. Yet, attitudes in the community are very important to be mentioned that started to change in meanwhile. Last year, several cases were filed with the police and court hearings opened by the Center for Social Affairs based on claims submitted by the parents of the minor girl who were seduced by adult men and who were brought to their homes as brides. Roma parents have been encouraged to demand institutional support in fighting against child marriage based on available legal mechanisms, which was a success story for all of us. While parents and youngsters still fail to clearly articulate the question, they acknowledge that this practice affects their development and advancement of society in a negative manner. Activities for bringing change need to be tailored to the needs and close to the understanding of the group based on our experience. Change needs to come from inside and not imposed by the standards of others. Change needs to be supported and acknowledged while messages shared as broadly as possible. We need to show that women with courage to bring change is a necessity towards breaking stereotypes around girls. In order to do that, more investments in community women's organizations who work on the field is needed. For a change to happen, we need to invest in a safe space for women to function in hope, since no policy or law will be good enough if there is no real ground for their implementation. I'm always saying, let's not make it so hard for girls. Let's try to make it much easier. Finally, I will quote a sentence from the report. Getting to zero harmful practices will require much faster progress. It demands a society-wide effort where everyone who has a role in stopping these practices steps up to do so.
Nesime, thank you so much. It really is so powerful when you speak, especially because it is so personal. It really comes through, as you say, all children, they are children. And it's great to hear that attitudes in the community are changing. There's a lot of work, as you say, to be done, but it's great to hear what has been achieved. Thank you. Okay, we go now to a new voice, a beautiful voice that we haven't heard yet, the voice of a singer, Kalia. She is a singer, but also an activist, and she is the voice of the UNFPA in Kazakhstan, and it's great to welcome her now to the panel. Kalia, you recorded a song, and that song is called Her Future. And its aim is to raise awareness about child marriage in Kazakhstan and get people to actually challenge the way they see girls in society. Tell us about the song and what motivated you to write it.
Good morning, good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a really honor for me to represent our social project, Her Future, in front of all of you. How I started, how am I here? Her Future is a song which turned into a social project that we implemented with the UNFPA in Kazakhstan. And this project is aimed to stand for the girls' right, for the prevention of adolescent pregnancies, child marriages, children abandonment. I'm a singer from Kazakhstan. I'm a voice of UNFPA in Kazakhstan, but still I'm just an ordinary Kazakh girl who was born in the southwest part of our country in a very traditional family. And it can seem that very normal for everybody that I go to school, that I continued my education at the university, that I traveled, I learned languages. I even was able to leave my career in national company and start my singing career, nevertheless that my dad was against it. But now I understand how privileged I was. And I should say that when I was studying at school, one of my classmates, she became pregnant after the 9th grade and she left the school. So she was only 15 years old. And the other, my classmate, she left the school because she was given to get married. It wasn't her choice, actually. Yes, and her parents did this arranged marriage for her. And she was the oldest girl in a family where were only 5 girls. And the destiny of all that girls was the same. All of them was given to get married after the 9th grade. So there were only 7 girls who were able to graduate from the school. And I never questioned that. I thought it's okay, it's normal, because I was raised in this society. But bit by bit, when I opened my eyes, I traveled and I learned a lot, I started to understand that something is going wrong. And it is obvious that those girls were forced to drop out the school. It's not the dad of that boy, it was a boy actually, that my classmate, she had a boy after the 9th grade, she left the school, and and her life changed, not her son's dad's destiny. He continued his life as it was. And the other girl who got married, she dropped the school as well. So we should say that after she got married, she got pregnant. And of course, she was a child and her body wasn't ready for the childbearing. And this is the problem as well. And it was almost 25 years ago. Don't count how old I am. But, and I should say that Kazakhstan did a lot regarding the gender equality and fulfilling its obligations, but still we have a lot of things to do in front. Unfortunately, every day we hear heartbreaking news about rape, women beaten to death by their husbands, home violence, sexual abuse, and this quarantine made it even worse. And the most dangerous place for all these women are their homes. And I can't believe that it's happening now, because as it was esteemed that 1/3 of women face sexual violence in the dangerous place, like during the wars. And it is the shame that 20% of women are facing the same risks, like sexual abuse and home violence, in a peaceful Kazakhstan with no war. Can you believe it? So, and we still have 15% of women who do believe that their partners and husbands can beat them. because they did something they didn't like. She left home without permission, or she declined to go to bed with him or something like that. And it's for me, it's shocking. I can't believe how shocking it can be for the others. And the problem is that all these women facing this violence at homes, they raise their children with same beliefs, especially girls. And we decided to speak openly about these problems. I decided to do it through my music. I have a lot of partners in the cultural sphere who do represent on the theater stages and raise all these social topics. And we decided to do the documentary film with Kazakhstani well-known documentary producer Katerina Suvorova, and the film name is Kız Bulsun. So Alana mentioned the name enough, and the partners from Azerbaijan said that about these missing girls, and we have the same problem in Kazakhstan, but we call the girls Ul Bulsun, which means may it be a boy. Can you believe it? So we have this kind of name in Kazakhstan. And this film is about Kazakhstani women born in different families in different parts of our country. So in different, they live in different conditions, but all of them have something in common. They have one name that they were given, received at the birth from their parents, Ul Bulsun, may it be a boy. As this project explores very important phenomena in our society, like boy or son preference. And we have it in Kazakhstan as well. This is the problem. And I'm very surprised that we are not in the statistics that our colleagues mentioned. So, and we will share the personal and real stories of women who live in modern Kazakhstan, whose names proclaims their inferior status in their own families. And even I was raised in a very respectful and loving atmosphere, and my dad has only one daughter, me, and he's very proud of me, and he loves me a lot, and he has 2 sons, but still he lives in this atmosphere thinking that boys are better. We have tradition in Kazakhstan. We do serve the traditional national dish called besh parmak, 5 fingers. And when we finish that and the big family events, the daughters-in-law, they come and take that plate in the end. And the oldest man, is again men, not women, the oldest man passes the plate to the daughter-in-law, and she takes a bow and he gives the blessing. And the most frequently blessing that I heard in my life was, I wish you to have a son. I never heard anybody saying, I wish you to have a daughter. And even my dad, once he was passing that plate to the daughter-in-law, and he was wishing her to have a son. He said, look, Dad, she already has 3 sons. Why don't you wish her a daughter? And my dad, he said just, no, boys are better. And he regretted that the same moment, because he raised the feminist daughter. And I said, why? So you think that I'm not, that your sons are better than me? And he couldn't answer. He said, oh, it's a tradition and etc. So this title, Kız Bulsun, it means may it be a girl. So we want to create a new name as a new manifest. So I understand that there is no single solution to protecting the girls and women, and we need to work in partnership with government, non-governmental institutions, religious organizations as well, because some problems like early marriages are supported by religious organizations. And we need to work in a partnership with world organizations, our social, our media, our public persons, artists. I'm very proud to be to have an opportunity to be a voice for the girls, and because they need to be heard. So I'm a public person, and I raise these very vulnerable questions in my in my songs, in the documentary film that we initiated. And I'm sure that if any abandoned girl, scared and lost, who is standing in front of the decision, should I leave that child with me or abandon that child? So if she realizes that how many people are working and to build up the beautiful world where every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every young person's potential is fulfilled, she will understand that she does have her future. Thank you.
Wow. And what a voice you have on so many levels. It's so inspiring to listen to you. And I believe we are going to hear and see your video right now.
Yes, thank you very much.
Kız tağdırı mahabbattan жоғары, әрбір қыздың опа бермес обалы, әрбір қыздың кеудесінде бір жүрек армандан сап адалдықпен соғады. Әй жігіттер, обалына қалыңдар, қыздар сұлу бір олы арманда. Алдамандар, алдамандар, гүл қыздар, ұрпақтарды жалғағандар гүл қыздар. Әрбір қызда жанған жұлдыз үміттер, махаббатын қыздардың аялаңдар, аялаңдар жігіттер, аялаңдар жігіттер, аялаңдар.
Kalia, fantastic. That was your song, Her Future. Very beautiful indeed. We wish you the best of luck with your work. And that word, ulbulsen, kizbulsen, very interesting word that I will do lots of research about. Congratulations with all your success. And thank you for sharing your testimonies here today. Okay, we are coming to the end of our debate here today, of our presentation. And what I want to do now is to ask all our panelists to give one sentence about how COVID-19 can be an opportunity to create a new normal where girls are valued equally. And we just heard from Kalia actually that very sadly, the situation for girls is actually getting worse during the quarantine. Anyway, we are going to go first, back to our first guest. I'm going to ask Natalia if she can give a minute sentence, please. And we're going to start with Natalia Vodianova. Your message, please, in 1 minute.
Ready? Yes. Oh, I think Natalia has had to leave, so.
Okay, great. No problem. Alana, you. Okay. Yes, start us off.
Thank you so much, Maria. And you know, we finalized the State of the World Population Report before the extent of the COVID-19 crisis and its impact on the health and rights of girls everywhere became clear. And I think as Kalia just spoke to the really shocking statistics and the things that are going on around women and girls right now, excuse me. We know from research that we've commissioned that national and international efforts to bring an end to harmful practices have scaled back or stalled because of the pandemic. And this really is having devastating effects on the lives of millions of girls worldwide. But, you know, obviously the pandemic is making our lives a lot harder. But at the same time, I think that this new virtual world gives us an even bigger platform to reimagine the future. And I think I, like you, Maria, feel so inspired today after listening to all of our panelists. I think that I feel confident now, listening to everyone, that the new reality 10 years from now, that 12-year-old girl that we imagined at the start of this session, she will have the power to live free of harm and control her own body and her own destiny. And I think that's a world worth fighting for every single day. And I want to thank you, Maria, for being such a wonderful host, but also our incredible panelists for sharing their experience and showing us that it is possible and showing us that progress is being made, and we will get there soon. So thank you so much, Maria. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Alana. Okay, we go next to Christoph. Your one sentence in 1 minute, please, Christoph.
Thanks, Maria. As Alana has just said, the pandemic has been really bad for our fight against harmful practices. And I think that things will first go worse before they get better. But what we have learned, I think not only around me, but elsewhere, is the role of women during the pandemic. As carers in health institutions, but in families everywhere. They were everywhere. And once again, I think it's through the recognition of their crucial, essential role in all social and family and political institutions that the situation will improve. And I think we should never forget the role that they have played during this crisis. And it will help us in the future to move forward.
Christoph, thank you very much indeed for your message. Let's bring in Nassima now. Nassima, your 1 minute message, please.
Thank you, Maria. As I was speaking previously, you can notice that I'm a woman with a mission. But I strongly also believe that all women should use their own experiences as an example to fight harmful practices and support girls' education and independence. That is one of the ways. In that manner, solidarity as a characteristic of women's movements, who basically have been the guardians of families' well-being, emphasizes in this time of health crisis mainly through their bigger participation as healthcare and social workers from one side. On the other side, as field activities, women and girls are part of community-based services, mostly bearing the responsibility of operations and direct contact with citizens in need. In crises like this, girls show off their unconditional love for the others and by that become pillars of the society. I believe that this health crisis showed off the true value of the girls and in that way can help us to shape the real image of the girls for the future.
Nassima, thank you very much for your message. Leila, your 1 minute message, please, to end.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you so much for being our host today. I think it would not be possible without you. Undoubtedly, COVID-19 has brought many challenges, especially upon women, especially upon vulnerable societies, especially upon the ones who are in need and were in need even before. But COVID-19 also demonstrated that changes in our daily habits are very possible. Even I would say radical changes in our daily habits are very possible. So let's use this opportunity and use this lesson learned to switch our mental click so that we become the contributors of equality rather than vice versa. And I would like to challenge our listeners for the meeting today. Try to make every room you enter, try to make a habit to count the number of men and women, and then try to find an explanation. Why are there more women in the grocery store? Or why are there more men sitting at the parliamentary committee? And try to find an explanation for that. And I guarantee you that if you make it as a daily habit, very soon you will be able to tell what are the small differences that makes the society unequal, or that we need to change to make it everything equal. So by starting to think about that, by starting to talk about that, you will find your own place. How can you become the contributor for equality rather than vice versa? And finally, I would encourage everybody, and this is also a challenge, to read, analyze, think, and act upon the UNFPA State of the World Population Report, because this is an amazing report, definitely worth acting on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Leila. And yes, that example to walk into every room and start counting the number of men and women, I will definitely be doing that. I really will. We go now to Orkan. Your 1 minute message, please.
Okay, as a world, we are going through a difficult period right now, and the sex-selective abortion for me, it's a problem to be not solved immediately. It will take a long time, but we must work non-stop. And as a creative, we believe the creativity has the power to transform human behavior. And I think if we work on it, we can change people's minds, people's behaviors. As Alana said, respect, protect, and fulfill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orkan. And now we end with the beautiful voice of Kalia. If we could have, please, your 1 minute message.
Yeah, sure. This crisis showed us that the most vulnerable to the abuse are women who are dependent, economically dependent on their relatives, husbands. So, of course, we need to invest in our girls, in their education, to give them the opportunity to get the profession, to get the job well paid, to be financially independent. And one thing I realized as our colleague from Georgia told us, count how many women and men we have in the room. I went to the intellectual school under the name of our first president, and it is very hard to get to that school, and they got the brilliant education there. And when I saw their wall of their government, they have their own government, the president, the prime minister, and the ministers, almost all of them were girls. They are brilliant, they are so open-minded, and their eyes are so bright, but I don't know where we lost them. We lose them in their marriages, and it doesn't have to be like that. We have to raise our girls like, if you get married, it doesn't mean that this is the end. You have to fulfill your potential, even being a mother, being a wife. So I think this is the only thing that I can say in the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So wonderful to end with your inspiring voice and message. Just a very quick note from me that I have a few more things to say, but just thank you to all our panelists. You really have inspired me as a woman, as a journalist. And I just want to say very quick thank you to all our panelists, our audience that are watching us online. And also, this show is being directed by Dilara, a woman. Our floor manager is a lady as well, Lerzan. We have Onur and we have Efe, and we have 2 cameramen as well. But yes, it's been directed by a woman. Thank you so much, everybody. And I want to do one thing before we end, just to thank you all again. Our panelists, Natalia Vodianova, Alana Armitage, Christophe Gilmotto, Nesime Salioska, Lela Akiashvili, Orkan Karimov, and Kalia. And thank you to our audience online. I think I've thanked you again, but I encourage you, our audience, on Facebook to read the report, and you can find it online at the UNFPA website. And as we say goodbye and close, just a note to stay with us for a few more minutes. Don't log off just yet. A recap. We've heard these harmful practices inflict a devastating array of harm on individual women and girls and on society at large and future generations. But it has also become clear today that we have the power to defy the forces that perpetuate harm and to create a world where every single woman and a girl is free to chart her own future. And we will end now with some images from the UNFPA's She Counts campaign that is starting today and brings together influencers and role models from all over the region who proudly support the girls in their family and set a powerful example for others to follow. Thank you all for your company. Thank you to our guests, our audience. Thank you everybody behind the scenes. If I've forgotten any names, forgive me. To our technical staff at the UNFPA. Yes, Hussein, also technical staff. Everyone here at TRT World. Everyone that contributed to this live event. Goodbye. Hoşça from Istanbul, or I would say görüşürüz. I hope to see you all again. Do stay on for one more minute as we watch a video and log off and say görüşürüz in a very slow way. Thank you very much for being our guests here.